Hello and welcome to another Reaconteur video, and in today's video I'll be going over more things that Deepwoken stole from other media. Not referenced, stole, because I like being decisive. Make sure to subscribe since only about 20% of the people watching right now are actually subscribed. And also subscribe to the second channel link down below in the description for more of me and more non-Deepwoken stuff. Man, I can't wait to fight in the chime of conflict. Aw man. Do you hate when this happens to you because of your internet? Well, guess what? Gear Up Booster could have you covered. As we all know, Roblox's servers can cause some issues at times. But with Gear Up Booster, you can stop most packet loss with their anti-packet loss features. In fact, I'll show you the difference in my ping with Gear Up Booster on and off. Without Gear Up Booster, my ping is going as high as 170, but with it on, I can go as low as 50 ping, which is really good by Roblox standards. A lot of other creators you guys may know are using it too, such as great friend of mine, Agamatsu. In fact, I like to see how low you guys can get your ping. Using Gear Up, the lowest ping I could get was 50. Download Gear Up Booster using the link in the description and comment section down below, and comment your lowest ping number to challenge me. Also, make sure to use code Reaconteur, which is just my name, for 10% off a membership subscription. Now back to the video. I know some goober's gonna comment saying they're references, but I don't care. Honestly, I really don't care if they're references. I don't want to see, but they're references, Radiator. They're not stealing if they're making the assets by hand. Shut up. Anyway, starting out, I think we should talk about bells. Not any of the bells specifically, because yeah, almost all of them are references, but I've covered those before. But bells as a system are taken straight from Made in Abyss and are inspired by the white whistles, which can maybe take the form of bells. I'm not entirely sure since I don't know about Made in Abyss, but I do know bells are supposed to be the white whistles from Made in Abyss, and they provide you with special abilities when you ring them or something like that. Anyway, let's cover some mantras. I'm sure you all know Blade Harper's progression, and the dashes are a reference to Bleach. The black invisible dash flash step is a resemblant of Sunito flash step used by the hollow Arancars in Bleach, and the progression is resemblant of Ichigo's Bankai progression, where he enters a world within his sword to fight it and master it because the sword needs to submit to him. I don't know. The swords aren't very submissive, but he makes it submissive and puts it in its place. Let me stop talking like this. Anyway, the two combat mantras Blade Harper gets, guess what they're a reference to? Palm Strike and Decimate. So the entire thing is a reference to Bleach, but these two mantras have VFX, which have a flurry of slashes. So the combat moves are a reference to Sukuna's Cleave and Dismantle from Jujutsu Kaisen, which is just insane to me. How are you guys going to base your entire oath around Bleach and then just like change it and make the moves based on Sukuna's Cleave and Dismantle from Jujutsu Kaisen? Not only are they combining two animes in one here, but I just think it's so funny to think about how it's so dry for content. They're not only just stealing anime content, but now they have to mix and match because they couldn't think of anything to go with Ichigo's Bankai as a stupid little oath. It is so funny. Anyway, along with that, the flame mantra Flame Ballista is a reference to Fugu, which is the name of Sukuna's fire arrow attack that he uses in the Shibuya arc and other times within the manga because the show is very delayed in comparison to it. The Flame of Denial is clearly a reference to Dark Souls' Tears of Undying ability, which does the exact same thing and looks almost identical to it. The Flame Within is also probably the Power Within from Dark Souls as well, and while being similar to the Howl of Shibriri from Elden Ring, Deepwoken sadly came out before Elden Ring, so it's just a coincidence because Elden Ring took inspiration from Dark Souls since, you know, they're made by the same people. The mantra Flame Blind is also likely a reference to Phoenix from Valorant because his blind is just like a little snap fireball of light, and so is the Deepwoken Flame Blind move. It's pretty much the exact same except you're not curving it around a corner, and that's only because its use case doesn't require you to ever curve it around a corner in Deepwoken. Along with that, the semi-recent Spark addition to Flame Repulsion, which by semi-recent I mean within the last year because it didn't come out unreleased, it's another Jujutsu Kaisen reference as it was added to be similar to Gojo's Reversal Red, and I'm 90% sure the real Punchy is the reason why this exists, but let me not get into that. I did mention Bleach earlier, but another Bleach reference is the reworked Bolt Piercer, which is meant to be similar to Liked Reagan, which is a move that Quincy, specifically Uryu, uses, which is even easier to tell and that it's a reference when you have the Blurple Thundercall variant, so yeah, it's pretty blatant. Spark Swap also reuses the sound effect from Snap Celeritas from Rogue Lineage. Although it is changed slightly, it's definitely the same sound effect, so it's not even really a reference, it's just a content rip, which I think is pretty funny. Along with that, another thing that's kind of just like a content rip is whenever you use that Ice Spikes move, the one that you have to jump over, it just uses the unblockable sound effect and a similar looking symbol above the move, which I know, Sekiro reference, I was a top-ranked, top 70, Sekiro player at one time, Sekiro speedrunner, actually. actually top 70 me. I was top 70, actually 67th in the world on a glitchless category. Anyway, it's been a while since I mentioned that. The Warden's Blade is also a reference from the swords that Virgil summons from Devil May Cry. And speaking of Devil May Cry, I may as well mention that the Providence coat is definitely just Dante's coat from Devil May Cry remade in Roblox. Like, it's definitely that. Like, there's no way it isn't. Anyway, the Blast Spark Shadow Gun is supposed to be Cero Metralleta from Bleach as well, so, you know, it's a reference to that. But then again, it could also just be the Duelist Dash VFX from Rogue Lineage. But even if it was supposed to just be Duelist Dash ripped, it is definitely just a reference to Cero Metralleta because Duelist Dash is a reference to Cero Metralleta. So it's still an indirect reference to Bleach, even if it's just ripped from Rogue Lineage, which it possibly is. And I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure Eclipse Kick is just a modified animation of Rogue Lineage's Axe Kick, so that's another content rip right there. Really funny to think about. And Shadow Travel is definitely ripped from Rogue Lineage's move, the Shadow, which lets you teleport between shadows, which is definitely Reaper's teleport from Overwatch, just limited to shadows. So it's another reference of a reference from the devs' previous game that they just ripped and added content because they thought it would be easy and nobody would notice. But look at me over here nitpicking. I noticed. Anyway, the Isli's Pyre Keeper may be inspired by Blade Ball. You can tell because it's oversaturated visuals and bright colors. No, I'm joking. It's probably inspired by Pharaon's Greatsword and Dagger from Dark Souls, as both weapons are impractically large sword with main hand daggers and an offhand. So not only are both weapons equally impractical, they're both equally good because they're both like really good in both games. I did forget to mention this, but the move Float Like a Butterfly, or well, the passive, the Blade Harper passive, is likely a reference to Chip Z'Nuff from Guilty Gear, more specifically a lyric from his theme song, just a very obscure reference that may not even be there, and it might just be a funny coincidence, but I feel like it is because the name has nothing to do with Sukuna, even though it's supposed to be like Cleave and Dismantle, so it might just be. And also, just all of Silentheart comes from Fire Emblem apparently, for no reason actually. The ship in the quest is named after the beloved Zofia weapon. It's not a ship, it's a weapon in Fire Emblem that they named the ship after. And then both Dreadfighter and Lodestar are names of classes within Fire Emblem. And absolutely confusing, Manikati is the name of Lyn, a character from Fire Emblem's sword, which is confusing because Manikati in the game is a weird cloning uppercut move. So its name is completely irrelevant to the source material, and the devs just thought it sounded cool. Which makes even less sense because Manikati probably means something, which is why it's in Fire Emblem as the name of the sword. But then by naming the move Manikati, it just takes away all meaning from it because they thought it sounded cool, and I just think that's really funny. Anyway, the Broodlord and Mudskipper Brutes are also a double reference. Their designs are pretty closely based off of Clickers from The Last of Us, but on top of that, their designs seem to be loosely similar to Maharaga from Jujutsu Kaisen, which I wouldn't put past the devs considering the 9 other Jujutsu Kaisen references scattered around the game. In fact, I'm willing to bet that in the next weekly there's probably going to be a Gojo Oath that gives you a move called Spatial Field that repels people from you or slows them down or something. Like, let's be real, there's gonna be more content rips in the future, and I'm gonna end up making another one of these videos, because sometimes the content's a little bit dry. Anyway, back to the current references, rather than predictions of one's soon to come. The crystallization path for Frostra is a reference to one of two things: SCP-009, the red ice that kills people, or potentially a reference to nature. I know a lot of you don't know much about nature because, you know, you're playing Deepwoken, but there's red algae that can make red ice in different parts of the world. Regardless, I think it's more likely an SCP-009 reference because the ice spreads around and kills people, like the SCP-009 red ice that kills people. Anyway, the Old World Sun Pendant is also literally just Azura's Star from Skyrim, which I actually found this one myself while playing through Skyrim on the Nintendo Switch OLED on a plane. And the reason why I found this out is because it is an item I absolutely need, since my 2 main weapons are Bloodscythe and Soul Rend, which are basically requiring the enchant. Sorry, I got off topic. Anyway, if you type in the chat, "I will never be a memory," and then you start Kindred mantras, then you get 1 ring instead of 2, which is a direct reference and Easter egg to Sephiroth from Final Fantasy, similar to the Murasama from Type Soul, which is also a reference to Sephiroth, and this is not bait. This is not bait. Leave an angry comment about why it's not a reference to Sephiroth. Anyway, Purple Cloud is a potential reference to one of 2 things. First of all, Devil May Cry's sword, the Yamato, which is, you know, the model basically is based off of. But second of all is the Murasama from Metal Gear Rising. Only in its use, however, not really in its new model, but the weapon's fighting style seems to draw inspiration from Metal Gear Rising, as within Metal Gear Rising, you can't draw the sword unless you're a cool guy, which is why only 2 people ever draw the sword, and they didn't even do it unless it was just like a draw draw and a cut, which is what you do with the weapon. You only do a quick draw with it. You don't actually pull it out completely to fight with. So, you know, it's possibly a reference to both of those. Now, I was baiting earlier, but the worm tooth is actually a reference to Sephiroth's sword, the Masamune. Deepwoken itself is actually one big reference, by the way, so this might be something new to a lot of you, but if you translate both words in Deepwoken, so deep and woken, 50 times through 50 languages, you actually get the phrase bad developer, which is a reference to when Archmage and Reaconteur saw world events win a poll and went ahead to work on conquests anyway, because it's what they wanted. Speaking of conquest, the entire thing is a reference to League of Legends, which is two things. The most popular game in the entire world, averaging a whole 130 million players per day. Absolutely insane that that game has that many players. I would kill that many people. But the entire thing is a League of Legends reference, from the towers to the minions to just the way it works and the formatting. It's all League of Legends, and it's like they have infinite inspiration to draw from, and it's still 2 years delayed. How are you guys going to do that? Anyway, the Arcwarder suit equip animation is a reference to Iron Man and kind of how he just assembles the suit around him. The Wraithclaw weapon may also be a reference to Wolverine, the superhero, not the animal, but it's loosely based around his bone claws before the metal skeleton was put in his body, which, if you're a real Wolverine fan, you'll know that he has bone claws sometimes. Anyway, the rifle spear might just be the most blatant thing in this entire game, because the rifle spear is the rifle spear, taken straight out of Bloodborne. Same design, same name, same function. They didn't even try to mask this one, which is really funny. They might as well have just called the Worm's Tooth the Masamune when things like the rifle spear made it into the game. And I feel like both are equally not likely to get the game taken down for copyright issues, so it feels like it shouldn't have even mattered. Anyway, the first light is just taken from Guilty Gear. It's almost identical to the sword Soul Bad Guy uses. Yes, I play Guilty Gear. I main Mei. Get mad about it. Linkstrider is a reference to the anime Boruto because they both suck. The divers are another Made in Abyss reference, especially with the black divers being inspired by Made in Abyss's group known as the Whistles. Apparently even the armor designs are super close to the Whistles' clothing and armor in the show/manga. But I wouldn't know that because I'm not a Made in Abyss fan. Speaking of factions, however, the Ministry may be a reference to the Ministry from Fahrenheit 451, which I should probably clarify is a book. I know a lot of you wouldn't know it because it's a book. It's a pretty old book and a lot of you don't read, but it is a book. And also all the religious stuff in Game Gods is just taken from H.P. Lovecraft, like almost entirely. You could write a parallel between Cthulhu and every drowned god in the game and it wouldn't be far off. Even the whole like drowned cities and stuff is inspired by Relaya, which is the drowned city of Cthulhu in H.P. Lovecraft. It's its whole thing and there's so much to it. But yeah, the drowned cities are inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. Also, the Haas emote is a reference to Big Haas from Rogue Lineage, which is a bit weird because that's kind of an obscure thing to reference. Like, why are you referencing Big Haas from Rogue Lineage? You guys couldn't make an emote for something more recognizable? Anyway, some funny stuff I want to cover about all of this thievery, or as some of you lame fun killers like to call it, references. First of all, pretty much every Rogue Lineage reference is just a straight asset rip. Like, actually, reused sounds, reused tweaked animations, reused models, just straight up reused content every single time, and it's so funny. And also, yes, I know the Hasimo is a reference to Akuma from Street Fighter, and Big Haas is a reference to Akuma from Street Fighter. If you left a comment on it, leave it there because you got baited, and it's just really funny. Anyway, another funny thing, but Yayafino references Genshin Impact a lot. His entire armor kit is based on Genshin Impact, and yet he's never played the game. The old Divine Spear model, which I think he made, I'm not entirely sure, was taken from Genshin Impact, and he has never even touched Genshin Impact. He just likes ripping designs from it because he thinks they're easy to rip and they look cool, which is honestly insane. And also, Elden Ring actually did copy Deepwoken with some of their moves. If you didn't know, Margit uses a move that looks kind of like Pressure Blast. Yeah, crazy to think that FromSoft copied Archmage and Reaconteur. Like, it's really cool. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Shoutouts to Goobka, Cyberboy21, and Drizzy Drake Fan. I love you all, have an amazing day, and goodbye.